What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Canndid Boss Talks. Today, it is my pleasure to bring on board a good friend of mine. He is an inventor, patent holder, lifetime entrepreneur. He's with Chosen Payments, but also he is the deputy director of Los Angeles NORML, Mr. Ian Rassman. What's happening, Ian? How you doing, brother?
Rico? So good to hang out with you. I love hanging out with you.
Always, my man. Always.
Always a good time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not in a quarantine sesh right now. So
yeah. We do what we can so we can hang out again.
It is true. So glad you see I have the Pacalolo right behind me too. Give you a little subtle shout out there.
Yeah.
Excellent. So it's so great to have you on Canndid Boss Talks with us. For this programming, we always go a little deeper than anything else that I do. We get pretty candid with the, in my opinion, the most interesting people in the cannabis industry, which you definitely are one of those. All right. So, right. You've got so many monikers, so many titles attached to you. Which one resonates the most?
That's a good question. I feel like lately I'm resonating with a lot of NORML. It's been such a wild rush lately over the last 2 years, right? Since things have changed here in California. So I feel like there's just this tidal wave pushing us all forward. And I feel like a surfer at the crest of the wave, just lucky to be out there at the right time when the big wave arrives. So it feels like the times are now for cannabis to be pushing forward and changing. And it's changing quick. Some things are changing quick, some things not changing quick enough. So I think that resonates a lot with me. But you know, that's a passion sort of a job and it's really a passionate sort of thing to try and push forward some advocacy work. And then, you know, I also, the other hat that I wear most frequently is my payments hat, whether that's for inside or outside of cannabis, because I actually work outside of cannabis quite a bit as well.
We all have to stay connected to the mainstream until cannabis is the main thing, right?
That's right.
So, with that being said, for everybody who is not as familiar with NORML, you want to give them a brief background of what NORML is?
Yeah.
In your position there?
So NORML is an organization that's turning 50 years old this year. It was started in 1970 by a fellow named Keith Stroop. And he basically created this moniker NORML, N-O-R-M-L, being the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And really, so for 50 years now, this organization has been trying to push forward some normalcy to how we approach cannabis in the communities and in the courts and in the market that we're seeing develop here now in California. So it's organized at a national level. So we have a national organization that really pushes this whole thing forward. But then there are multiple chapters under the national brand. There's a chapter in every state. So we have 50 state chapters. There are chapters outside of the U.S., which struck me as strange in the beginning, because like it's really an American movement to change our laws, but it's really been adopted by other countries as well. There's a Ireland NORML, a UK NORML, a France NORML. I mean, there's a bunch of them now, and they're trying to fix their laws over there, and they're modeling their activism on us. So there are also in larger states like California, there are multiple chapters. There's a San Francisco chapter, San Diego, there's San Luis Obispo, so kind of spread out around the state, and then of course Los Angeles. So I am the deputy director at Los Angeles NORML. We are the one of the oldest chapters in the country. We were actually founded 47 years ago by a fellow named Bruce Margolin. So we've been around just about as long as the national brand, and we've really been focused, not me personally, in 47 years, but the LA chapter has been focused on changing the laws here in Los Angeles. So that's sort of the structure of national. You know, there's a national federal sort of movement, and then states would go after state laws. Like, so our California chapter would be working on employment rights and various state bills. And then here in Los Angeles, we're working on local issues like licensing that we have going on here, social equity, expungement. That was a big one here, as you remember, a couple months ago,
Right.
where, you know, there was a 66,000 people were automatically expunged by computer,
Yeah.
search criteria, automatic. And then about a week later, another 3,000 or 4,000. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, that's a big thing. So that's what NORML does. They focus at the federal, the state, and the local level. So here in LA, we are the largest chapter in the country. We at Los Angeles are larger than 42 other states. So it's really, we have a substantial population. And as you know, being an Angelino, we have a substantial number of issues going on in this city.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. We're like LA NORML is really, the way I see it is we're sort of tip of the spear and a magnifying glass on the microcosm that is the cannabis industry, right? We have the population, we have the industry, we have a ton of the industry is based here in the Southern California area. We have a very consumer-friendly city. We have the nation's first consumption lounge, right, in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
So Los Angeles is highly progressive, a lot of action going on. And I see that Los Angeles NORML really needs to be the example, not just for the larger NORML organization, but really around the world. I mean, there's hardly any place where there's more activity going on than LA.
Right. Speak the truth, brother. You speak the truth. That's why, that's why I love NORML. That's why I get down with NORML, and I'll do everything that I can to help push that forward too. I know when you first came to me, like as a NORML representative, I was like, what the fuck is NORML? Like I've always heard of NORML. I've always seen NORML out in the open, everything from Playboy magazines when I was young and the High Times. Like, and we had a joke about that last week. I talked with Tommy Chung. It's like Penthouse, Playboy, and
And High Times.
and High Times. Those are like the only magazines out of comic books, and somehow we used to steal those magazines from the local general store. Yes, general store. I'm from the country. They still have a general store.
I had a couple general stores too. I haven't always been in LA, so I remember
Nice.
the old general stores.
Right, and so I mean, the way that I saw it, man, if you are a proponent of legalization, you support not ever being arrested, not having the ability to be arrested while in possession or tied to cannabis, and you think that the laws going forward should be consumer oriented or based, like pretty much you fall in line with NORML's principles right there. So it's not really hard to get down with the philosophy there. And I'm just like glad to have you pushing Keith and Bruce's legacy forward as we are right now. I think
How lucky are we, right? Like to be able to stand on the shoulders of really such
giants, man.
giants. I'm just feeling so honored. I know you are too. We're lucky to be following up these giants, really.
Right. It's all about finishing strong, man. They had a great start. The middle, where we are right now, is it's murky. We don't know what is going to be next. So it's really important that we band together as consumers, as advocates, and we have all hands on deck to make sure we have a unified message. So I'm really, really happy for what you're doing, the new light, the new NORML that you've been instrumental in building there. And we're glad to have you on Canndid Boss Talks as well.
Thrilled to be here.
Yeah. So jumping back in the past a little bit, right? So an inventor, lifelong entrepreneur. At what point did you shift into the cannabis arena, or was it something that was always lurking in the background there?
Um, really going back to the beginning of cannabis, I got to go back to when I was a kid. I grew up in Hawaii
Hmm.
in the 70s and 80s. I arrived in Hawaii in the late 70s and left in 1986. So I was 16 by the time I left Hawaii. So, I locked down most of elementary school and first 2 years of high school. And it's Hawaii, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, there's a lot of weed going on in Hawaii. I mean, there's a lot of everything in Hawaii. There's a lot of
Right.
pineapples and mangoes and like
Right.
stuff grows. Like it's not that. I mean, it's just that stuff grows. I mean, like here, that you got to go through a little bit of effort to grow a little bit of cannabis, but in Hawaii, you just throw some seeds out behind you and come back and you got some plants. There's just
Just
no
so
effort.
lush.
Yeah. So stuff grows. So it was all around. The war on drugs was pretty much going strong. Hawaii was mostly toeing the line. And it was kind of in the shadows, but you always knew it was there. You go to any sporting event or any music event or anything, you always smelled it. And, I knew what it was. But I would say I was almost surely brainwashed by the war on drugs because I never tried it. I didn't have
Really?
any issues with it. It didn't bother me, or I'm sure I didn't look down on people. I was like, I don't know anything about it. It's not for me, and
Hmm.
sounds like it's not so good either, right? So just young, impressionable, and towing the line that was
Right.
being fed down my throat on the television.
Right.
This is your brain on drugs, and they show an egg frying in a frying pan. You're like, yeah, I don't want to do that to my brain. So,
Right.
so I'm like, I guess I'm not going to touch that stuff. So I never touched it the entire time I lived in Hawaii. Never
Mhm.
even tried it once, and it was around me. I had friends that were using it. It was in school. Um, more or less infiltrated most levels of life. Never touched it. Got out to California, 1986. Went to high school here in LA,
Mhm.
and still didn't touch it. And still war on drugs, 1986. Went on to college, tried it for the first time in college. And I was like, oh, okay, this is not like, I don't feel like a scrambled egg here. Um, and and then when I was
Maybe
about,
over easy.
yeah, right. So anyway, 1994 comes along. I'm 24 years old, and I'm working for a software company, and they send out an email, and they're like, "Hey, we're building an international department, and we're looking for people that want to move overseas." I was like, oh, right here, 24 years old, single, no ties. I was like, I'll go. So
Mhm.
they selected me. I did go. I moved out there, moved to England for a year. Worked in the software world, doing CRM, SFA, programming. Show up at a business, do a needs analysis, see what they need the software to do, customize it, demo it, show it, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
My boss said, my 1 year contract comes up. My boss is like, so you want to stick around? And I'm like, yeah, I'll stick around. He's like, how do you like living in England? I'm like, it's not. I mean, it's fine. It's not really exciting. It's sort of not the international thing I was really looking for. But I was traveling too, like full time, every Monday, Friday, flying to another country. But he's like, well, where do you want to live? And I'm like, Amsterdam. And he's like, go. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm like, okay, great. So I moved to Amsterdam, loaded up a U-Haul, drove it over to Amsterdam, and there I am living in Amsterdam. So I spent about a year and a half living there. But again, I was sort of working around most of Europe. But I would spend all the weekends in Amsterdam, most
Wow.
of my weekends in Amsterdam, and I sort of got a little bit more connected to the cannabis culture over there, which was so vastly different. They didn't have that war on drugs. They didn't have this stereotypes that were, and these stigmas. Really, I guess that was really it. It was a lack of stigma
Hmm.
um, in Amsterdam and Holland in general. And it was like a no big deal. It was like some people like beer, some people like wine, some people like cannabis. But there was just no stigma associated with it. You'd see people of all ages going into a dispensary, and I think they largely treated it like medicine. You saw the older people going in for their aches and their pains and this and that. And so you saw sort of a normalcy around it, that it
Hmm.
just wasn't a big deal. And as well, I think it's been pretty well established that as far as drugs in a larger sense.
Right.
Holland's done an amazing job at not locking up their populations for drugs, no matter what the drugs are. Like you can be a heroin user, lying on the street with a needle stuck in your arm, and they're not arresting you and locking you up forever. They're, trying to help you. And it's not so much of a criminal thing as it's more of the social thing. We have to try and help these people that are so far down the wrong side of some of these really, really bad drugs. So
right.
They just had a really different approach. They had a real culture to it. Of course, there's a real culture around cannabis in California. Holland has a different culture, but similar in many ways. So that was really sort of my first experience with cannabis, was living in Amsterdam. And, it was a pretty good experience.
It's not a bad first experience, I say. It kind of screwed you up for the rest of the rest of your experience. It's just like catching up to Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I stayed working in software and living in Amsterdam, and it was good.
I was going to make a bad joke there. It's like your first sexual experience being with a porn star, right? Good luck the rest of the time. No, on that note, no, seriously, you have been a very, very worldly person. I guess that really translates into your current positioning. When you and I first met a few years back, it was because I'd see you at all these events, right? Like, hey, that guy's hustling as hard as me, if not harder. Let's get to know each other. Everything from the small meetups up into the large festivals. You were always on the scene, and it just made sense for you to transition into your role at NORML. Pushing forward legalization, pushing forward the messaging that we all believe in. And it was very, very easy for me to get down with that. And I was very, very happy to have you on board at Canndid when we were doing live events. And then me being a part of the NORML going forward, helping push the movement into new parameters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way that you come out with a worldview and then also with a more logical view, being an inventor, how do you see this whole thing playing out? As far as the legalization process, as far as normalization, from the mind of Ian Rassman, I'd say you're a lot more well-traveled than most, including myself. How do you see it playing out? And what would be more the ideal way for it to play out in your eyes?
That's a great question. So there's a few potential unexpected things that could happen, around the elections at the end of this year. So taking that off the table, that something really wild and unexpected doesn't happen there, and then we sort of continue forward as we've been doing for the last number of years. I think it's going to take a few years before we reach some sort of national level of decriminalization. But I think that the right way for this to play out is less of a national law that it's okay, or a national, decriminalization effort. I think we need definitely have a national decriminalization, but I think as once you're not arresting people, then how do you move the industry forward? I think that's sort of a state level decision. The states really need to decide how commerce is going to work in their state, how taxes are going to be collected. The age restrictions, I think everybody's pretty much settled on the 21 sort of age, but all of these things are probably best left to states. If you really think about what they taught us back in school about our government system, is that most of the laws really need to come from your state. I mean, it's a local thing, and then there's federal guidance and assistance and larger self-defense and all that sort of thing. But really, the laws need to come from our states. So the states need to set up the parameters on how the industry is going to function and how the consumers are going to gain access and how it's going to be safe. So I think that's the way that it should play out. Will it play out like that? I don't know. I think eventually it'll probably play out like that. But I don't know how long it's going to take before we get to a federal level of decriminalization. So as you know, NORML has a call-in chapter meeting twice a week,
Mm-hmm.
every Tuesday, Thursday, where all the NORML chapters from all around the country can all dial in. We can all just have a quick chat. We get some updates on federal issues going on. And you hear from some of these other states and what's going on, like TC in Alabama. He runs Alabama NORML. I mean, the things that this guy is fighting for in Alabama are so vastly different than what we're fighting for here in LA. Here in LA, we're fighting for the things that are important to us, which is social equity and licensing and these things, because we already have legalization here, in California. TC, him and his chapter, they're fighting to not have a cop pull you over for broken taillight and see a finished roach on the floor or in the ashtray and slap the handcuffs on you and take you away and potentially lock you up for years. These are the things that are happening in other parts of the country. And it's no joke. People are really getting arrested for ridiculous stuff, for an almost uncountable tiny amount of weed. They'll go to jail. Here in California, anybody over the age of 21 can grow 6 plants. I think that if you knew what you were doing when you were growing, a plant could yield 3 pounds. So you're talking about 18 pounds that you or I could have in the trunk of our car at any given time. And it's legitimate. And TC's people go to jail for a burnt roach clip in the ashtray, and we've got an entire trunk full, and it's not a problem. You're within your rights because it's what you grew. It's your own personal harvest, and so it's so different, the things that are happening across the country. So the states need to figure out how they want to do it, but we need to very clearly stop arresting people. That's really the first thing that has to stop happening. People need to stop going to jail. Here in California, we're giving licenses to people to sell money. And ironically, even here in California, we still have people in jail. LA did a great job expunging, nearly 70,000 records, but there's a lot of people still in jail for smoking it, using it, selling it, distributing
just crossing the street and having a joint in your pocket. And yeah, I mean,
and then we give out licenses for people to sell it, and we still have people in jail for selling it.
Yeah, three strikes law really fucked everything up.
Yeah,
on a broad level. So that's one of the things that when I got into the industry, that I really fought for, was number one, expungements. Number two, just releasing as many people as possible for those low level drug crimes, especially with cannabis, because we opened up legalization, and now you have big pharma, big tobacco, big alcohol. You have who else? Like all these bankers and all these finance people, and that's the world that I escaped. the world that I escaped and I got into, the greener pastures, and they followed me into this shit. And so I believe, my personal beliefs are everybody should have an opportunity to experience on some level cannabis sativa, right? On some level, whether you are on the of the mindset that health and wellness should be at the forefront, you're of the mindset that economics should be, or the lifestyle face of it. They all are interchangeable. They all are connected. But if you have one focus, you should be able to participate. And it makes no sense that folks have been locked up. And I always talk about the Black and brown communities, because obviously I am both of those, me being Panamanian. And it's at the very least 3 generations. We're approaching the 4th generation now of Black and brown people just being targeted for this, and it really destroyed our communities. And this is not even talking about the crack epidemic and the whole Oliver North, Iran Contra, Freeway Rick Ross a deal where there actually was, and there is proof of the government pumping crack and cocaine into the ghettos, but you were taking away people for using a plant and for distributing a plant that is medicine. And all of the operators, the large operators that are coming in now, you have the knowledge of this, you have the data, the research has been done, and you know for a fact that this is medicine. There is lots of benefit from this. So why the hell would you keep those people locked up? And big shout out to Last Prisoner Project. There's a lot of other organizations out there too, trying to make sure that these folks have their release, especially when we're dealing with this pandemic currently. Get those guys out of there, right? And how awesome would it be, right, if you were to get some of the OGs that are locked up, right? You get them at the forefront of their own companies. You get them to help the big corporations,
right?
So I'm all about like connecting the dots there and putting the people who deserve a chance in place and let them play.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's always the stories, sports analogies here, because I'm a big sports guy. There's always analogies. There's always stories of, and I have plenty of them too. I was probably the most accomplished athlete from Milo Bumblefuck down in Virginia, but I was not the best. There was a dude, Chris Smith, that was way better than me. He's fast as hell. Could jump out the gym. Everything that he did was like lights out better. But he ended up being a drug dealer, like on the sidelines back where I'm from. And those people need to get in the game. Like, how crazy would it be if Michael Jordan was just a street ball legend?
Yeah. Right.
And that's what we're going to have. And you're going to have even more so when we have federal legalization, whether they decriminalize first and legalize second. I hope they do. You're going to have it even more so. You're going to have a very, very divided America, because that is another portion of POC culture that is being appropriated for profit. And no, so sorry, I didn't go on a little diatribe there.
No. Listen, let me tell you. Actually, it's a I've been living in LA for 34 years. Moved here in '86.
Mm-hmm.
The war on drugs was rampant nationally in the mid '80s, but in Los Angeles, it was just ripping it up. And
Right.
you know where it was going down. It wasn't in the town where I was living. I was living in, out in the burbs, in a moderately wealthy community, and a smaller portion of Black and brown people, no doubt. And the war on drugs wasn't exactly being waged in my high school, but it was down here in LA, like where we are now.
Right.
These are the front lines, and these are the people that were getting arrested. And you had just in this part of LA, of California, you definitely have a higher percentage of minorities, but the war on drugs was really targeting them. I mean, just going after them, going into South Central, different parts of LA where the minority population was way skewed high. And that's where they were conducting the war, which means that the Black and the brown people went to jail at crazy disproportionate percentages. I mean, ridiculously disproportionate percentages to like white guys like me. I never in my life have been spread out over the hood of the police car. Probably deserved it once or twice, just to make sure I wasn't, back in high school, make sure I wasn't causing trouble. But I never got pulled over because I looked funny or I gave somebody a reason to be, pull me over. We see this going on nonstop with Black and brown people getting profiled and pulled over, and there's that terrible story we're all watching develop out of
and killed, hunted down,
straight up killed.
And killed. And
we're all watching that story coming out of Georgia now, right? Aubrey, how do I pronounce his name?
Aubrey.
Aubrey. Holy crap! I mean, unbelievable. Leaving that on the side, but the war on drugs was rampant in LA. Black and brown fathers predominantly got picked up, locked up, and put away. This decimated families, and this has generational impact. And this is what's really, really, really important to realize here, is that when you start disproportionately locking up people of color or any sort of minority, you're having a generational effect. You've got fathers that are in prison for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. What happens to their kids while dad's in jail? They're probably running around on the streets, maybe not hanging out with some of the right people that they should be. They sort of lost the right influence, which is the father, to have guided them into, I don't really want you playing with Bobby over there. I don't know that he's not really the kind of person I want you hanging out with. They lost those role models. So you see it being propagated, right? Like the kids who ran around without their parents around to guide them properly have a much higher percentage of heading down a bad road themselves, skipping out of school, whatever it is. So the war, I hear you. I'm really sensitive to the racial issues underlying cannabis here in Los Angeles, because LA suffered greatly, and LA is still suffering over what was done on the war on drugs here. Like I said, it's generational. So, we got people that are our age now, whose parents went to jail for this, and, it's bad. So the generational effect is really horrible. So I'm very sensitive to that here in LA also. And it's sort of, to be honest with you, it's really sort of one of the reasons why I sort of hitched myself to NORML. I'll be honest with you. So like you mentioned earlier, it's really easy to get down with the principles on NORML. Go to norml.org, read about what the guiding principles are. It's pretty easy to go, yeah, I line up with all that, right? Like that's easy. I knew that I wanted to get into the cannabis industry and I wanted to be part of it. I recognized that it was a fast growing industry. I'm an entrepreneur by my very nature. I'm attracted to things that are moving fast, with high potential for growth and high potential for taking the initiative and creating new things. I see a fast moving industry as not exactly shooting fish in a barrel, but shooting fish in a swimming pool, maybe. It's a smaller than an ocean, right? Like, so your odds are better, your chances are better, you run into the other entrepreneurs. So I knew I wanted to be involved in cannabis. And I also knew that there had been a lot of people involved in the industry for a lot longer than me.
Yeah.
There was a legacy market that had to be respected. And this legacy market ties back into what we were talking about a minute ago, with the war on drugs. I recognize very quickly that a lot of people that are working in the industry today, a lot of the people that you and I know, who are legit and working in the industry today, these people, many of them went to jail. Many of them suffered. Many of them had their property seized. Many of them, had incredible hardships that they went through to get where they are today, and really to help actually move this whole industry to where it is today. Right. So I just really strongly felt that if I was going to come in to an industry and be like, I want to make my living here and I want to make money out of this industry, I had to find some way to balance out the equation. It felt very lopsided to me. I never went to jail. I never had any of these bad things happen to me. So I felt like I had to do something to pay it forward for the people that were coming behind me so that they would have an easier time, as people did for me, right? Like, people went to jail so that I could be doing the things that I'm doing now here in the industry. I think that's honestly the truth of it. So I really felt that it was important to have a vehicle where I could contribute in a positive way, as others had done for me. So that was really the motivation to get involved with NORML.
We definitely appreciate that, and appreciate you being an ally on that front, and being sensitive to those issues, because they just do come up in every day with as a person of color. In the Ahmaud Arbery case, see, what really gets me about that, because I'm from the South, and that is why we don't go out running. That's why we don't go out in certain places. And people always talk about, like, in the cities, oh, don't go in the hood. Like, we're in the country, you can't really go anywhere. You might just end up missing, and that's why we always did have our guns on us, and that's why we are, shout out to Killer Mike. Gotta get Killer Mike on here too. Shout out to Killer Mike. I had a conversation with him at last year, and he was 100% like for the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment, as we see it, is for when your community is under fire and trying to prepare themselves to fight back against a government tyranny. That doesn't make sense for the white community. It does make sense for the black community.
If anybody should be armed, it should be black joggers. Seriously.
Yes, I mean, you saw in Michigan, the armed protest. Oh, they're protesting quarantine. These people are trying to keep you safe, and you're protesting this with a bunch of elephant guns out there with these giant military rifles, intimidating Democratic elected officials, and then now you have black advocates and black activists are escorting black politicians to City Hall, and they're armed as well. When does this end? I don't want to have a race war, a civil race war going on here, but it doesn't look good. The pieces are there. I mean, the economy is tumbling. Who maybe at a appointment with my midwife a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to stop by, and see you a quick moment, and we saw that I was out in like a Marina Del Rey, and like nobody has masks on. There's more now than ever. You can truly see the two sides of America. Before it was like, oh yeah, like the biggest piece of Trump's campaign that resonated with me was that one slogan he had: the silent majority stands with Trump. And me being from corporate finance, I was like, he has a fucking point. There's so many people that support this dude. They won't say it publicly. What we see out, the crazies, the racists, the Confederate sympathizers, like all that shit, like that is only maybe like a 10-13% of them. But like the majority of people, they get down with what he's saying. They get down with the economic shit that totally robs the poor and people of color communities. They get down with that because they want to preserve what they have. And you couldn't really tell who they were, but the masks.
Yeah.
Who doesn't have a mask on? Gotta watch out for that. No, I'm just joking.
So all right. Let's talk race a minute, since you brought it up, and we're talking about.
Let's go.
This is Canndid, right? This is Canndid.
Always,
right.
Man. Always.
So, not being a person of color, and most obviously being like literally one of the most protected statuses, white male. I mean, like I'm at the top of the pinnacle, right? When you look at just stereotypes. How do you feel that race relations have gone over the last few years? And I think and not being on the receiving end, not anymore, by the way. And we can go into that too. But I have been on the receiving end. Right. When being white in Hawaii is no picnic, let me just tell you that. So I've been on that side, but I'm not on that side now, where I'm really would actively feel it so much. But I sort of do get a pretty clear sense when I see things like that video coming out of Georgia, and you see things like that going on. It's just feels so blatant, and it almost feels like that's accelerating this kind of behavior and this kind of vigilantism. People, it seems to me like people are looking emboldened, in our recent political climate that we've seen over the last few years. I feel like people are becoming more emboldened and thinking, oh, maybe it's okay to be like that, Right. What do you think? How have you personally felt over the last couple of years?
Shitty. Since like it's been really, really bad. since Obama came in office, then the whole Tea Party bullshit. And I say bullshit because they never believed that shit. Like Donald Trump, like all that. Oh yeah, no taxation. We need to shrink government, all that other stuff. Like no, government has expanded more. They have more power under the white, um, maybe racist, maybe not, no, pretty racist leader that we have in charge now. And the goalposts have been moved. Like, oh, you said, oh, the Obama this, we're after his policies. No, you were never after his policies. It was 100% because he was a black man. You cannot tell me otherwise, that it was not because he was a black man, because Donald Trump is doing way more as far as being a supreme leader than Obama ever did. Right. And we actually had, it just so happened that he was black. We had a black person in office that did all that he could do. And I hated how soft Obama was. I hated how much of a centrist.
He had to be soft. He couldn't be out
but,
there.
But me, I'm a radical. So
hey, look, we're both involved with NORML, so we're both pretty radical, right? So.
I hated how much of a centrist Obama was. And me being in Chicago at the time, and this is 100%.
You're both Chicago.
I get it's Canndid as fuck on here, and I'll always keep it real. Like I didn't vote for Obama the second time. I voted for him in 2008. I did not vote for him in 2012 because I was working on the south and the west side of Chicago with a bunch of kids, and there was a bid for the Olympics that came through, and they wanted Chicago to be the Olympic city, like in 2020 or something, 2024 or something like that, and 24. They paved and they fixed all the roads and made it look all pretty in the white part of Chicago. And they did nothing for the black side. And I give it to Obama. I will 100% give it to him. This his second term, he did a lot more for the black and brown communities. But the first term, like I felt robbed of my vote. Yeah, and I lived right next to Hyde Park. So in Hyde Park in Chicago, I was living at River City at the time, which is just a couple of blocks away. I was at his inauguration, like crying there. They all crazy. Like, oh, this is
wow, that must have been some experience.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then he didn't do shit. And I was in corporate finance because I was a herb at the time. I was a sellout. I have no problem saying I was a sellout because I was poor and I wanted to get a lot of money, and that's why I was in corporate finance. But I got in at just the wrong time at the end of 2007, just to see everything go. And when everything went down, guess who they blamed? Obama. Everybody in my office. Oh, it's Obama's fault. Obama. What? You know all the shit that. I'm like going off right now. Sorry. It's like uncharacteristic.
Right.
It's uncharacteristic.
He's at fault for credit default swaps. What? How does that?
Right. Like you use that fault for all of this shit. And then now when Trump is in office, like Obama, he could, he should, but he didn't blame everything on Bush. It was Bush's fault. And before Bush, it was Clinton's fault. He could have blamed his predecessors, but he couldn't because he didn't have the privilege to do that. They would crucify him. And that's all that President Trump does. So
it has changed, no doubt.
Right. And with me, yeah, it's personal. It's personal because, you know, through this whole COVID-19 thing and the incompetence that has come from the top, you know, the rich, the fish rots from the head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so does our country.
Him and all those very fine people.
Right. The fine people. Well, I'm from Fluvanna County, outside of Charlottesville. And that really hit home for me. And that's what really turned me, because before the whole thing happened in Charlottesville, before that whole thing went down, he said, before he even said there's fine people on both sides and everything, I was one of the very few people of color, black people, I was on Facebook. That's why I'm not even on Facebook that much anymore. I used to like troll the hell out of people. Like I'm a big troll. I'll admit that. Like going back to my college years, like in 2005 at Northwestern, We were one of the first 20 schools to have Facebook, and that was the birth of a troll. Like no longer was I was just like talking shit to people, just get a rise out of them. I could do that stuff online now, and I was always that troll. But when Trump became president, I was like, oh, this is actually a unifying time for America because we have somebody very, very incompetent at the top of the country. However, I know plenty of black people in Virginia that 100% like Trump is like your crazy uncle. Trump is like your crazy uncle. He will say some wild shit. He will do some wild shit. But you know what? You always know what he's going to be doing. So it's good to have this motherfucker at the forefront. Everything changed. Absolutely everything changed when Charlottesville happened. For a couple of reasons.
That was a stunning moment. I mean,
it was
watching
crazy.
him on TV, you were almost like, am I watching? Is this the news or is this like a TV reality show? I don't get this.
Right, and what really got me, like on several fronts. Number one, the kid that organized the Unite the Right rally, I went to high school with him. 1 year younger than me, Jason Kessler. 1 year younger than me. This kid was like, he's like a quiet kid. He's like on a punk rock like a kid. The internet made him bold. It made him bigger. It gave him power. Donald Trump, in his apologist ways, his ability to look the other way about white supremacy and what's going on, which is a CIA priority, which is a Homeland Security priority, which is an FBI priority. It is public information, yet the White House never said anything about it. It's another conversation to have. But that emboldened him. And that girl got killed, like all this crazy shit. And what I was so upset about was, where are all the white people outraged at this?
Yeah, I know, right?
Like where are the white people that claim, oh, that's a bad, why don't you post something about it?
Yeah, right.
Like, you're on there like, oh yeah, well, I really don't get political, but you want to twerk online. You want to appropriate Black culture. You want to experience, you want to participate in all the fun things in Black culture, but you don't want to experience our pain and our oppression and being targeted like us. So like where is the disconnect there? And that's something that needs to, and this is why I love NORML, there's something that needs to, that messaging needs to bleed into the cannabis movement. And one, I know we're like going like along on this subject here, but like the one thing, like my badge of honor when I realized that I really made it in my own world, in my small world, I like to control the controllable, live in my own little universe here and keep my blinders on, is when I was doing Cannagather Live. One show we had over 300 people. And Josh Weinstein, he is the founder of Cannagather from New York. He forwarded an email complaint to me from a very, very prominent, a powerful white woman in the cannabis industry. And she said that she loved the content. She loved how packed Cannagather was and how awesome the community was seen there. However, she refuses to ever go to a Cannagather again because she felt white shamed.
Oh,
I shit you not.
oh. Okay.
She said she felt white shamed. I said, yes. I was like, because for you to come into the cannabis industry and just capitalize off of everything and totally like whitewash like everything that's happened for over 100 years to the community that was deconstructed is not only ignorant, but that is dangerous. What you are doing is you are adding marbles to the fishbowl right there, fuel to the fire for all of this racist bullshit that we're dealing with right now. Like the company, the Freudian slip there, the country, this is a company, the country is being torn in two directions right now, and every little bit there adds to it. So and when I built Cannagather Los Angeles, it was to bring everybody together because cannabis, little plug here, cannabis saved my life 3 times. And then the first time in my TED talk, and the first,
That is an
yeah,
awesome TED Talk
I
too, by the way.
appreciate it.
I will plug your TED Talk because that was the bomb. You don't have to worry about that. I
Appreciate it.
enjoyed the hell out of that. That was
Much,
really good, honestly.
much
Um,
love. But the first time that it saved my life, it was because I came from racist America in Virginia, and I went to college. It's cold as fuck. I didn't know who had the weed. And I made my first white friends, my first Asian friends, my first Mexican friends, my first gay friends, all because of weed. Like weed, you get in the cipher, you meet people you didn't know before, you exchange stories, and you know what? You become friends because those are the people who smoke weed.
so
And you
true.
come back, you forget everything that's going on again in the bullshit parts of America, and you come through and you just like you chop it up and you connect with more people. And that's what I wanted Canna Gather to be. And that's what this industry means to me. It's a giant cipher and it brings everybody together. Like, enjoy this shit. So sorry, go ahead.
It's true. It really is a unifying plant. It's really funny when you look at that. I look at my uh, I've always had a diverse group of friends. I
Mm-hmm.
really have. But I would say my group of friends and the people I really call friends has
Mm-hmm.
really taken on a new level of diversification since I actually started working in the industry. And I like that
Right.
quite a bit. Um,
I love it.
yeah.
And I don't want this, and I don't want it to be a social burden. I don't want it to be a morality burden on everybody. However, in order to progress, we must process. Period. We have to acknowledge what has happened. We need to acknowledge, we create a status quo, create a some sort of middle ground where people can be respected for the sacrifices that they've made, and then people can also be respected for the contributions that have yet to come, be they from um, our melanin deficient friends such as yourself, or they be from somebody who is a person of color, or they be from somebody who is queer, or somebody from a totally different country who had nothing to do with the movement that has something to add to the conversation. Right? Like the loonies always said, I got 5 on it, right? You got 5 to put in, hop in the cipher. That's how it always was when I was growing up. You want to get in on this dub sack? Where's your $5, bro? Like come on in. And I think that's how it should be. I think that's the power of NORML and organizations, similar organizations aligned with the same philosophy. That's what it should be. It should be all hands on deck.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the name of your organization is. Doesn't matter what who the face of your organization is. It should be all hands on deck, because as we have seen through modern government actions, there's no competency there. And I love Lori Ajax. I love her as a person. She's a great overall, but
Cool.
she comes from the world of alcohol, right? And I really truly believe that is what is wrong with the California cannabis industry. That's why a lot of the social equity problems are happening, because you don't have people actually who have come from that legacy world on the board there. You don't have people in charge that have come from that legacy world who know the struggles, who know the loopholes that people can still hop through like full body. And they know what's going on. They know exactly what needs to be done in order to move forward, right? And so that's why you always have to honor the legacy operators, the legacy advocates, because you can always learn from them. You can always learn from the past, and if you don't, you're doomed to repeat it. And we just cannot whitewash what has happened. We cannot let go what has happened. That's still a fresh wound. I have friends that got arrested 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and they're doing years in Virginia for having a joint.
Yeah.
And it's just ignorant that people think, oh yeah, well, it doesn't really affect me. Like, it does. And if shit pops off. I hope to God it does not. If shit pops off, guess who those people who have been wronged, the first people they're going to come for is those people who never had any sympathy or empathy for them. And they stole their culture. They stole their property. They stole their rights and flaunted it in front of them, because that's what's going on right now. And that's what the current leaders, I'm not going to say like certain people, but the current leaders in the world are pushing forward. Like this, we've seen how this happens time and time again throughout history. It's not pretty. So I think we were at a very, very, very pivotal point. And I believe that the cannabis industry is a microcosm of the entire world, too. And I wish I was in college right now. I had some time that I could like write out a deep essay and then put this on my Facebook post.
It's so interesting what you said about that complaint that Josh sent you about the woman being white shamed. That's really an unbelievable statement. So I
can tell you after this who it was. I was like, yeah.
I'm not sure that I want to know. I'm not sure that I want to know who it was. Here's the thing. Like you can't. You just should not be any part of this industry if you don't know why we're in this fight. Let's just rewind the clocks 75 years or so. Let's go back to the 30s right now.
Right.
And because this is the genesis time frame of when cannabis became a bad thing. Right. Mm-hmm. Like we just gotten over alcohol, right? Like the prohibition times were over. Everybody was boozing it up. And so all of a sudden somebody creates this new fear mongering is really what it was. It was racial fear mongering is why we have all this cannabis prohibition across the country today. Back in those times, the newspapers were the only media that we consumed, Hearst, William Randolph Hearst, big California newspaper magnate, right? Like, has a friend who owns forests and paper mill to make the paper for the newspapers. Great buddies, great business partnership. They're just making money hand over fist, and then all of a sudden, this hemp stuff starts taking off, and it's better than trees, and it's more. Just everything about it is better, except that Hearst's friend doesn't own it. That's the only problem with it. So the two of them colluded to like get rid of this hemp stuff, and they pegged it a lot of this marijuana stuff on the Mexicans coming up across the border and taking jobs and this and that, and they just created this whole racial thing, and they really went after cannabis with a racial purpose. And then that continued really through the Nixon era. Oh my God, that guy was something. He targeted, for him, he wanted to be in Vietnam, right? And you have all the peace-loving hippies that didn't want any part of Vietnam. And they were all smokers and consumers. And so he went after the cannabis as a way of getting rid of the anti-war protesters, right? So cannabis has just consistently been used as a tool to divide us and separate us and throw some of us in jail. And that's just the history of why we're still fighting for legalization today. We're still fighting to break those stereotypes. And like, this is not reefer madness. There are not people coming across the border to rape our white women because they're high on cannabis. Like, that's not a thing. And if you notice, I don't even use the M word. I like really make it a point to try and not use the M word, because that word's bad. That word is a racist overtone of a word, right? Like it was so we're so entrenched in this history of racism around cannabis, and we have so far to go to change it. And I think it was you that made me sensitive to it at the very beginning when I first got in the industry a few years ago. And I met you, you had mentioned either to somebody else or to me that, oh, I don't use that word. And I don't also use, I like to use legacy market.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus the other word. And because words matter.
Yes, they
words
do.
matter. And sometimes words are very, very important. Not only do they matter, but they're critical.
Yes, because that's messaging and that's controlling the narrative out there. And I mean, it's just like, I mean, there's two different ways you can look at it. And in me, this is starting to show my age as I become an elder statesman. the rightful age.
Gray soon, you know.
Dude, I do. I have a few. I pluck them out and they come back in full force.
I got a few left that aren't gray.
No, yeah. So, yeah, the words matter, and so the N word, right? So I grew up like where I'm from. I grew up. If a white person uses that word, it's either in one of two situations: either he's about to get his ass whipped, or he's gonna whip your ass, right? If the hillbillies with him, he's gonna whip your ass.
Yeah, right? Yeah. There's something bad's gonna happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is where I'm torn on this, because I am a free thinker. I'm not really a socially or politically correct person. I'm a rabble rouser, and so I come on the West Coast, and it's different, and it's generational, and it's different, and it's a lot more accepted. You know, like without the hard R on it, it's more accepted for like white people to use that, and it just does not sit well with me, like at all. But here's the thing, like as I approach OG status, you know, as I approach OG status myself, and I become an old head, I understand like things have changed, and you know, words, the meanings of words can change. It can be lightened, and they can soften the blow. And I love the hip hop culture. I love the way that's expanded, and songs are songs. And people enjoy those songs, like whether in the public or not. And then there's a lot of N-bombs in those songs. And this new generation of the kids, they don't mind it. The black kids, they don't get offended. White kids say that. And I don't understand it. And I try just to bite my tongue. I just stay in my car and just leave. And
it is hard. It is hard to understand. You know, so I'm half Irish, and there's plenty of slang words for Irish, right? But,
yeah.
But now they don't have the weight that they did. When I lived in Hawaii, they called me Howley, which is straight up nasty thing to be called. And it's never done with affection. I can guarantee you that. But it doesn't bother me now to be called that. I'm like, because I just calls me that. I feel sorry for them that they're.
But at the same time, you remain sensitive to those who it does affect, right?
Oh.
Yeah,
I get very uncomfortable with the N word, to be honest with you.
Right, like me too. Like I try my hardest, and because I came up saying it a lot, right? Saying it a lot, and it was just like me and my homeboys, and it kind of came from the fact that we didn't have white people hanging out with us, so we can actually say, and it was more of an empowerment thing for us. Like for hundreds of years we were called this word, and it was derogatory. It was to put us down, and we've taken control of it, and like, yo, we made it a cool thing.
Yeah.
Right. And now like white people want to call each other this shit.
Well,
right?
That's funny. So like I get that word has been used on me as a term of endearment.
Right. Right. This is where I don't understand that shit. Like that's where
when that happens,
the line is drawn with me.
When that happens, it's with somebody who I'm very, very close with, and we're like brothers, right? But it makes me really uncomfortable still, because that's not my world. I mean, like, we're brothers because we're brothers, and we have a bond that transcends what each of us looks like. But you know, I've many times have been called that by very, very close friends as a term of endearment. always makes me uncomfortable. I'm like,
Right.
I get it, I respect it, I understand that it's a term of
Right.
endearment, and you're giving me a whatever, but I'm like, oh, I'm like, did anybody else hear that? I'm like,
Right.
I'm like uncomfortable. I'm like,
Right.
you guys know I didn't say that, right?
Right. And it comes from that, like the Mexican slang, or the word used as slang towards Mexicans, the marijuana word, and then the black market. So both marijuana and black market. Tackle those really quickly here.
Black market
So
is
yeah,
bad.
marijuana thing. All right, so marijuana thing is used to make the word sound, or make cannabis sound more Mexican, so you can target Mexicans. And then they were raping. Like, this goes back, like, comes full circle with the president we have. And they're raping. Like, all right, so like, yeah, so that's why I stopped. And I didn't know anything about that until I got on the legal side of the cannabis industry. And I credit Latinos for Cannabis, Fanny and Gabe over at Latinos and Cannabis. They told me about that. And then the whole black market thing. This is even newer to me, because this is about maybe like a year and a half ago. And I was still using black market. That's how I always came up with, from the black market. Oh, black market's cool. Black market's where you find the good deals. Yeah. And
Well,
then somebody told me that shit, and I was like, what the fuck you talking about? Like, you can't say black market. I was like, come on now, that's some PC bullshit. You're taking it a little too far now. Like, black market, that's some cool shit, and we're black too. And then lo and
yeah,
behold,
but
you
there's a real
Google that
connection.
shit. You
Oh yeah.
Google that shit, it all goes back to slavery. And I'm like, whoa.
It's the market of selling black
Black
people.
people. Yes.
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
what it is. It's not a legit, or it's not a genesis of legitimacy or illegitimacy. It's
right,
it's something terrible, really.
right,
And
right.
I as well only really snapped my alignment into that, legacy market way of
Mm-hmm.
thinking versus black market way of thinking as well within the last year. You
Right.
know, it's yeah.
Right, and me and my style. I'm never one to censor people. Like I said, I'm not politically correct in any way or form, but I do respect people and respect their feelings. And if something is tied to pain, oppression of somebody, I will respect them as a fellow human being enough to not say or do things that trigger them in public forums, especially, or when I'm around them. I know that this offends them. Like if if you're walking into a soap shop and you have gas, you're not going to go fart in the soap shop. You're not going to go fart in a perfume shop and stink it all up, because you know that does not belong. Right? If you are around a bunch of people that get offended by you saying something, why the fuck would you continue to say it? Like, that's just, it's not even common sense at that point. It's respect. If something brings people pain, why would you continue to punish them? That's ignorant, that's evil, and it just makes no sense to me. And
You should not ever be bringing pain to people. Everybody,
uh,
we're all born with pain. We all develop pain. Everybody struggles. Every single one of us is struggling with something. I'm
mhm,
struggling with something today that you don't know about. You struggling with something that I don't know about.
yeah,
We are struggling. It's the human condition. So we all struggle. Why would you add struggle to
right,
people? Like,
right,
especially when it's so negative. Like,
right.
don't.
Yeah, okay, all right. So yeah, to close it out, I mean, yeah, chosen payments. That is your day job,
I do.
and yeah, your day job, the revenue generator, and the payment processing world in cannabis, right? So, um, that being said, where do you see payments going forward? Or where do you see payments going forward in the uh, industry? And we do have to end on that. But yeah, where do you see payments going forward in the industry? And how are you helping things during this pandemic? How are you guys pivoting?
Yeah, good question. So as we sort of hit on before, there were two issues that really are sensitive to me with NORML, and I think we spent the majority of this call talking about the social equity and
No, I
the
love this, man.
all that.
We have to continue this shit on my like on my podcast too, like on my
Um,
recorded podcast. I'm down to go as long as you want.
as it is, that's all the social issues on cannabis are for sure one of the other sensitive things to me. But from a practical point of view, the other thing that's very sensitive to me in the industry is the financial side of it. Because in order for us to all move forward cohesively and within the framework of commerce and government, we need better access to banking.
Yeah.
Straight up, everybody in Canada
Indeed.
struggles with this, and NORML has been, this is one of the issues that NORML's been taking up for a very long time at the federal level to try and change the banking laws.
Mm-hmm.
So right now there's actually no laws that say that banks can't work with cannabis, but they choose not to because there's a possibility that the federal government can show up and say that's all drug money and we're taking it, and then so they just choose not to. So it really creates a problem within the industry. What I do traditional credit card processing, so bars, restaurant, limousine industry, really most anything retail. What I do for Starbucks or Subway sandwiches or whatnot, I can't do that same thing for cannabis because we don't have the access to the banks, to the banking systems that we need. So there's no credit. There's no credit cards for cannabis. You can't do it. Visa, MasterCard just don't want any part of it, and all the other card brands go along with that decision. Mm-hmm. So what do? You have to switch over to the only other options that are really available to get to the plastic in people's wallets, because we all pay by plastic, especially these days with COVID pandemic going on. Nobody wants to touch cash. Like many people already had an icky factor about cash and the germs on it being, dollars.
Was it 83% of all cash like has traces of cocaine?
Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. So it's dirty, nasty stuff that gets passed around. I think we're all a lot more sensitive to that now. So clearly the way that people want to pay is by credit card. You want to hold your phone close to the terminal and just transfer payments, or you want to do minimal touch points when you're buying anything. So what I bring in to the industry for retail cannabis, THC dispensaries, delivery is little terminals that largely function like an ATM machine, right. Which is not going through the Visa MasterCard rails. So it's sort of like standing in front of an ATM machine and you want to buy, your registered total is $87. So you request, $90 from the terminal, get your change, and it's digital. So you're not touching money. The dispensaries aren't holding all the money in the register. They're not sitting on a briefcase full of cash at the end of the day, wondering like, all right, who wants to drive this over to the bank? And
right.
So trying to get us out of the cash paying side of things. And then I do the retail. The one good thing about CBD in the Farm Bill is that that's been picking up speed a lot. The e-commerce side of selling CBD, that's been getting somewhat more acceptable. Mm-hmm. So that's good on that side. Where do I see this going? I think even outside of cannabis, I don't think anybody wants to touch money anymore. I really have no interest in it all. I keep a small little bit of cash in the car for those times where you're in downtown and it's cash only parking or something like that. But I don't think none of us want to touch cash anymore. We all want to do digital payments. That's really where everything's going. So what I'm providing is little terminals to accept digital payments in cannabis and then also outside of cannabis. Now it's about delivery. We even see California being able to deliver alcohol now. And of course you can get cannabis delivered here in California. So it's about having a little terminal, size of a cell phone, battery operated, 3G, 4G connection, go out to the customer's door, let them use their ATM card in their wallet and let them spend more. That's the other great thing about the plastic in our wallets is that, when we're standing there looking up on the counter, you come in to buy an eighth or whatever, and you're like, oh, you know what? Let me have one of those pre-rolls over there, and one of these, and one of those, because you're not limited to the cash you brought with you. It's now you're just limited by your own good conscience to be like, okay, I bought enough stuff. So what ends up happening is you end up getting, when you have digital payments, you end up getting about a 30% higher ticket price, sale price in your retail store. And that's true across every industry, whether it's Macy's and clothes and whatever, it's everything. When you can pay by plastic, you buy more. Look at how much people are buying on Amazon, because you don't even feel like you're paying. You're just like, click, and then delivery, click, delivery. It's just,
this may not be a good thing for the consumer.
I think we're definitely going towards digital payments. I think that at some point when decriminalization happens, there's two things that are going to happen. They're going to have it's going to be a watershed moment for finances and cannabis. You're either going to see something like the States' Rights Act push forward, or the MORE Act, or the Safe Banking Act. One of those three things is going to give the banking infrastructure the confidence that the federal government's not coming after them. Once they know that, then you're going to see I believe you're going to see the Visa and the MasterCard and more systems opening up and embracing cannabis. Everybody knows there's money to be made here. It's just a risk analysis. And at this point in time, with the ambiguous nature of the federal government's stance on cannabis, it's not a great comfort level. So I don't think it's going to change until one of those three things happen. Maybe it'll happen in November. I don't know.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's wishful thinking. I think we're going to be in this quagmire for a while. And for sure, we're going to be in this quagmire for a while. So it's really one of the things that I'm sensitive to with NORML is to try and get our banking laws changed. I see it as number one, it's what I'm doing in the industry, and I want to be able to do it normally, what I do for other people. But it's also going to be an issue on safety, safe access, right? You don't want to be a consumer going into a business that's got duffel bags of cash, because that's inherently sort of dangerous. So yeah.
So where can everybody at home find you personally, and where can they get down with NORML and chosen payments?
Ian Rassman, I'm oddly enough the only one on the planet, so I get the whole first page of Google.
Rico Lamitte too.
Yeah, that's right. It's not an SEO effort. It's just, there's not many people with a weird name like that. So I'm lucky. LANormal.org. Definitely come follow us at NORML, especially if you're in the LA area or even anywhere in California. We're really tip of the spear. There's a lot of issues going on here. We do a lot of exciting things at NORML. It's Los Angeles. We got a lot of celebrities around here, people that like to get involved, musicians. Everybody loves NORML. So LANormal.org. Chosen Payments with an S as well. Check out our website. You won't see a ton of stuff about cannabis there. But you definitely get in touch with me. Call them, email them. They put you right in touch with me.
Love it.
My email address is all over everything. LinkedIn. There you go.
Much love to you, Ian. As always, a pleasure, brother. We can go down the rabbit hole on my podcast too, on the Swabcast. I'd love to go down the rabbit hole there with the politics. It's not only an interesting conversation; it's a conversation that needs to be had without the gloves on, because I feel like too many people are afraid of offending each other. But we need to be able to just hear out everybody and call each other out for hypocrisy as well. So we'll definitely do that. So much love to you. Much love to LA NORML. NORML is a movement. And thank you for coming on Canndid Boss Talks.